Hi, this is Jim Reddy. Today I will be speaking about research methods. This is the fourth part of a five-part series on aligning your research proposal. This presentation is titled Moving from Research Question to Research Method. Before we move forward, let's recap the prior three sessions. We discussed how to identify a researchable problem supported by academic literature. We described the components of a purpose statement that align with the problem statement, and we illustrated research questions that align with the prior two phases. I want you to view research methods as being on a continuum. They are not rigid. You aren't required to choose one or the other. Think of research methods as fluid and ever-evolving, and a study can include components of both. However, there are three primary research methods or approaches. In quantitative research, a researcher uses numbers to describe a phenomenon, relationship, or difference. In qualitative research, a researcher makes sense of the words used by participants to describe a situation, event, or phenomenon. When a researcher purposefully incorporates components of both in a study, that type of research is called mixed method. Mixed method falls somewhere on the continuum between quantitation and qualitative studies. There are generally two types of quantitative research methods, survey and experimental. When performing survey research, you are quantifying attitudes, trends, or opinions of a population by studying a sample. This type of research could be cross-sectional, where you select a sample from a diverse population, or longitudinal, where you study a sample over time. Two types of research forms within survey research are descriptive and associational or correlational. Both of these methods are considered non-experimental. In a descriptive study, a researcher is describing attributes of the sample and generalizing these attributes to the population. In an associational or correlational study, a researcher is exploring relationships between attributes of the sample and generalizing these relationships to the population. Within the research form experimental, the type of sample selection and grouping determines whether it's a true experiment or a quasi-experiment. If a sample of the population was randomly selected and placed into groups, such as a control group and treatment group, then that type of research would be called an experimental study. However, if sample participants were not selected by random, such as in convenience sampling situations, but are placed randomly into groups, then that's considered a quasi-experimental approach. There are many forms of qualitative research, some unique to each discipline. I'll cover four common approaches used in business. Narrative research, which is derived from the humanities, involves the study of individual lives. Through the participants' stories, a researcher can construct a chronology and combine views of the participants with those of the researcher, thus forming a collaborative narrative. Data is generally collected from participants through single or multiple in-depth interviews. Phenomenological research, which is derived from philosophy and psychology, involves a researcher describing the lived experiences of participants about a phenomenon through the participants' words. Data is generally collected from participants through single or multiple in-depth interviews. Grounded theory research, which is derived from sociology, involves a researcher generating an abstract theory of a process, action, or interaction based on views of the participants. Data is generally collected from participants through multiple in-depth interviews. Finally, case study research. Case study research can be found in many fields and involves a researcher developing an in-depth analysis of a case. A case can be a program, an event, an activity, a process, or one or more individuals. Case study research is bounded or limited by time or activity. Data is collected through a variety of methods, such as in-depth interviews and a review of documentation, and can span a long period of time. Disciplines treat some forms of research methods differently. However, most follow certain principled verbiage. And that leads us to mixed method research. Convergent mixed methods research involves a researcher blending both quantitative and qualitative data to provide a comprehensive analysis of a problem. Data in this case is collected simultaneously. Explanatory sequential mixed methods research involves a researcher performing a quantitative study first, where relationships or non-relationships are identified, then explained through qualitative research. Exploratory sequential mixed method research is the reverse of the explanatory sequential approach. A qualitative phase begins the study, and participant information is analyzed. Based on the analysis of the qualitative data, a survey perhaps is constructed and utilized to support the quantitative phase of the study. Besides these three basic common mixed methods, there are some advanced methods. One such method is called the interventional mixed method approach. In this method, a researcher would implement a pre-test, post-test design. This is where a research design called action research could be placed. If you are considering performing a mixed method study, you are saying that a quantitative or qualitative study is not sufficient to answer your research question. Before you do this, ask yourself these questions. Do I need to explore some type of phenomenon before administering an instrument that measures the phenomenon? If so, then you'll probably perform an exploratory sequential mixed method study. Do I need to explain the results by speaking to participants that took the survey? If so, an explanatory sequential mixed method approach is appropriate. Finally, do the results match? If your focus is on that, then you probably should explore a convergent mixed method approach. With all this said, sometime the form of the research question leads you directly to the research method. But it's not that easy. Generally speaking, what questions lead to a quantitative research method, and why and how questions lead to a qualitative research method. However, in this grid, which is based on peer-reviewed research published in Tier 1 marketing journals, it's not that easy. For example, in black bold, in the what question, what is the relationship between downstream sales manager training, downstream salesperson training, and focused effort? That a standard what question leads to a quant study. However, in these Dahl and Moreau, these two authors, they framed their question as what motivates consumers to engage in creative tasks, and they conducted a qualitative study. Could they have phrased it, why do consumers engage in creative tasks? Perhaps, but when you read the study, they were really focusing on motivation. The next two questions are why and how. Under the qualitative column for why is a consumer's behavior influenced by their age? That's a commonly formed why question. However, next to it, you see Barwise and the other authors, why is watching television and video so good at helping people escape? And they perform quantitative research to answer that question. Could they have rephrased their question, what is the relationship between watching television and escapism? They could have done that and answered the same question. Finally, in the how row, how can solution actors succeed in governance matching? That's a standard how question that is common in qualitative research. Kim and their colleagues wrote, "How do brands' Facebook posts induce consumer word of mouth behavior?" Could their question have been rephrased, "What is the relationship between Facebook posts and consumer word of mouth behavior?" Possibly, but they chose that method and they answered the question through quantitative. So really, there is no general rule, but there is some trends you can see. So I want you to consider this. Visualize the execution of your study not from your lens, but from the participant's lens, and think about what they're going to do. Take a look at this picture. What do you see? I see what appears to be a man writing on a piece of paper with a woman leaning in. Could this be an interview where the man is taking notes and the woman is describing a lived experience? If so, it's a qualitative study. However, if you view that the woman is a survey taker and has provided the man with a copy of the survey to complete, in that situation, this would be a quantitative study. Let's look at this next picture. What do you see? I see a woman typing on a computer with what appears to be another woman in the background. If you see this person taking an online survey at work or in a lunchroom, then you have a quantitative study. However, if you visualize this woman corresponding to a researcher via email about her lived experiences, then you have a qualitative study. How do you visualize your study being performed? That concludes this presentation. We've talked about research questions. We've talked about research methods, the next step of research design. And for the record, here are my sources that are cited throughout the document and other background information for yourself. I wish you the best of luck. See you next time.